Krown Produce supplying select Canadian retailers. Krown Produce, proud sponsors of Canada West Football and Canadian University Countdown on Shaw.
And welcome to the final edition of the year of Canadian University Countdown, sponsored by Krown. I'm Jim Mullin. Well, it was a record-setting Vanier Cup, 7th Vanier Cup for the Laval Rouge et Or, a record-setting TV audience and a record-setting attendance at the gate. So, boys, what sort of records did you break this year?
You know, I don't know what Jim's talking about. We don't break records. With these mustaches, we're breaking hearts.
And mirrors.
You know, I think I'm getting creepier every single episode with this stash.
I can confirm that. McMaster Laval. The nation watched perhaps the greatest Vanier Cup of all time last year. 41-38, the final for the Marauders after a thrilling overtime field goal sailed through the pipes at BC Place. Fast forward to November 23rd, 2012, the rematch of all rematches. Finally, we can kick David out of this show and just say Goliath versus Goliath. Would the Rouge et Or get marooned for the second straight year? Or would the Marauders feel the Rouge et Ors, in the words of Carl Lewis, regular? Uh-oh. Let's get to those highlights. The Rogers Centre, the stage for this 48th annual edition of the Vanier Cup. A record 37,000 plus turned out for this one. However, many of them had yet to arrive by the look of this shot. Apparently traffic a little bad on Lakeshore Boulevard. The UTEC Bowl champion Laval Rouge et Or were the first to be introduced, looking to reap some redemption after losing to McMaster in last year's final in Vancouver, while the Marauders were looking for back-to-back titles, plus keeping their CIS record 21-game win streak alive. Both teams jawed at one another before kickoff. Apparently, there's still some bad blood between these two sides. Go figure. The Heck Creighton Award winner Kyle Quinlan squaring off against President's Award winner Freddie Pasillas. Glenn Constantin looking for his 6th Vanier Cup title. Steph Potasic hoping for his 2nd Vanier title as head coach of those Marauders. Okay, let's get to the action from the first 15. Coach P didn't like this start. First drive, Quinlan gets picked by Thomas Gerard. Quinlan taking a lick from Placius on the play. Turnover for Laval, but they do nothing with it. A few minutes later, Tristan Grenon finds Felix Faubert-Lacia for a gain of 12 and a first down. Then on 2nd and 2, Max Boutin gathers up another first down with his 15-yard scamper. Very next play, Grenon to S.J. Hydera. There's another 15. So Boris Bede comes in to kick the field goal, and Finkel just booted it wide to the right. Mack is able to get out of the end zone, so the scoreboard reads Bagels after 1.
That was true Finkel. Shift to the second cue now. Laval starts marching. Grenon on the run connects with Boutin, and the man filling in for the injured Pascal Lachard. Well, that's a 22-yard pickup. 2 plays later, Grenon goes to the outside for Matthew Norzil, and he's off. The second-year receiver blazes past everybody into the end zone for the major. The Rouge et Or put the first points on the board. It's now 7-zip. Laval would add to its lead later in the queue with a safety and this 22-yard field goal from Bidet. Red Machine now up by 12. However, next series for Mac. Quinlan on play action. Fires one to Robert "Call Me Bobby" Babick, who gets thrown into the pita pit ad. You know, those sandwiches are pretty tasty.
Very.
That's a 22-yard gain. Very next play, Quinlan goes for a run, picking up 16 with this scamper. Marauders in the Laval red zone. Then Quinlan goes back to Babick. He gathers up 3 yards, but check out the tackle from Matthew Massot. He grabs a hold of Babick's face mask. That's a 15-yard no-no. That moves the ball to the Rouge et Or doorstep. So Quinlan punches it in with ease. Mack on the board, cutting the Laval lead to just 5. Final minute of the half. Quinlan deep in his own zone. He goes airborne for Ben O'Connor. That's a 42-yard pickup. Mack looking for points, and they find them. Quinlan over the middle to Dallin Brooks, and he's off. Brooks goes 59 yards for the major. Mack 96 yards in just 3 plays, taking a 14-12 lead into the beer break.
Could McMaster ride that momentum into scene 2? Second play of the half, Grenon hits Norzil, who breaks a tackle, stays on his feet, puts on those afterburners. He picks up 27 yards. Then, on 3rd and 2, shades of Darren Flutie against the Stallions. The old fake punt and rush. That's a first down. Move those chains again. Not to mention they tack on 15 more as Declan Cross hits Adam Tebow late. Laval is hungry, and they're in the red zone. It leads to this 11-yard touchdown from Boutin. Laval retakes the lead and gathers a serious case of momentum. It would carry over to the defensive side as well. Quinlan scrambles out of the pocket. Plessius hunts him down for the sack, forcing Mac to boot the ball. Next series for Quinlan, same result. The Laval D steps up, gathering its 4th QB quash of the game. This one shaking up the Mac star QB. He's a tough kid, though. He'd stay in there. Laval would add a safety to go up 7, and they would add it to the lead with this.
Would have scrimmaged. They get it back to number 1. Boutin has the corner. It's a foot race now. Maxime Boutin down the sidelines. He cuts it back. Boutin, will he score? Yes, he will. What a run. Touchdown.
Max Boutin with his now infamous salute. Eat your heart out, Mike Rupp. That run put the Rouge et Or up 14, and they would not look back. As right before the end of the queue, Bidet nails this 37-yarder. Laval scores 19 points in the 3rd, taking a 17-point lead.
Things not looking good for McMaster's chances of repeating. Could they flip the script in the final queue? Not when you leave your QB to hang out to dry like this. Nobody blocks Plessius and then gives a kung fu bow, looking like Ryan at his Wednesday night karate practice. Buddy, you ever get that green belt?
Never.
Dying minutes of the game, Laval up by 23, so you know what time it is. Constantin gets the Gatorade shower from Plessius, so all that was left to do was to hand out some hardware. Gascon-Nedon picked up the Bruce Coulter Award for the top defensive player. Boutin won the Ted Morris Trophy for the most valuable player of the game. Then it was time to award the big one, the presentation of the Vanier Cup being handed off to the Laval team captains. The Rouge et Or winning its CIS record 7th Vanier Cup title, solidifying them as the greatest football program on earth. Or maybe just in CIS history.
I like the first one. The best Canadian college football team on earth. Earth. Done. Max Boutin puts in one of the greatest offensive performances in Vanier Cup history, rushing for 253 yards, the 2nd most ever in a Vanier Cup final. As a team, Laval rushed for 373 yards, which is a Vanier Cup record. The 605 total yards of offense the Rouge et Or put up is the 4th all-time in Vanier history and the highest net yardage in a non-overtime game. The Red Machines defense can also take some credit for the win, as they were able to sack Quinlan a Vanier Cup record 7 times, with Freddie Plessius earning 2 of those sacks. The win was Laval's 2nd in the last 3 years and also the 7th for the program, which pulls them past the Western Mustangs for the most in CIS history. Congratulations to the Laval Rouge et Or. You, like Andrew and I on this show, are the cream of the crop. Sorry, but not really, Jim Mullin.
Oh, buddy, that was quite the dig you gave old Jimmy there at the end. You better watch it. Better make sure your final check clears.
Is yours?
Ka-ching! No sale when we return the final panel of the year.
You were great in The King and I.
Krown Produce supplying select Canadian retailers. Krown Produce, proud sponsors of Canada West Football and Canadian University Countdown on Shaw.
Hey, welcome back to Krown Canadian University Countdown. I'm Tom Selleck. It's time for the round table, and we're going to start from the end. We got a crowded table here. We'll start from the very end. Conor, the Beast. Hammond is back. Mr. Jim Mullin, of course. Loading the musket and firing. Very nice. UBC quarterback, Mr. Billy Green, is in the house. Of course, Andrew Wadden back with us. Wearing a nice track suit, of course. Very nice, Russell.
I'm the coach.
Absolutely. You need the whistle or a clipboard or something. And of course, live from Toronto, the score, we got Donnovan Bennett with us. Thanks for joining us, Donnovan.
My pleasure.
All right, so let's start things out. Let's get right to it. The 48th annual Vanier Cup. McMaster coming out on the losing end. What went wrong for the Marauders?
They never really got comfortable offensively, and they specifically in Kyle Quinlan. He never really was able to step up in the pocket and make his throws. And, you know, on their zone read game, where they had a lot of success with throughout the year, most of the times they make defensive ends wrong, whether they read inside or outside. Well, Laval decided we're going to be right if we hit Kyle Quinlan. And they hit him early, they hit him often, and I think they banged him up a little bit.
And, I mean, let's talk Marauder defense or lack thereof. Boutin was killing him the entire game. Can you kind of jump on how hard it is to cover a guy like that when he gets going?
Well, and Laval really did it with 2 running plays, the inside and the outside zone. They were very upfront with how they were going to run the ball on first down early and often, and they were able to get great depth in their blocking schemes, and they were able to get to the second level and get on linebackers. And Ram Isho normally is kept clean. He was having pulling guards on him most of the game. The other thing is you saw the difference in the depth in the squads. Both teams were looking at their 3rd and 4th running backs, and, you know, Boutin was the much more explosive player than Reynolds was.
Donnovan, do you think that was one of the keys, though? When you take a look at last year's Vanier Cup, with Pizzetta coming out of the backfield, Laval had to respect the run. There was a little bit more of a combination in the McMaster offense. Really, the running game for the Marauders came out of Kyle Quinlan for the last 4 games. Is that the thing that allowed the Laval front 7 to pin their ears back and come off the edge so hard?
Well, that's a great point. And, you know, McMaster all year, they've thrown the ball to run. But with some young backs, often a big part of that is pass protection. And they were let down in that aspect at times by their backs and by their entire offensive line. And the 7 sacks hurt their passing game. And then when you're not able to throw to run, especially get the ball out of the quarterback's hand quickly, you know, that's going to affect how you're able to manage the running situations on second down. And again, the depth on both sides of the ball, Laval was able to rotate their linemen through, and they were able to get pressure nonstop, and I thought that was a big difference in the game.
Over 919,000 people tuning in for this one, just a tremendous event. How good is this for the CIS moving forward?
I think it's great. I mean, I think, you know, TSN did a great job of promoting it. The CIS did a great job of making it a first-class event throughout the week. And I think, you know, the momentum that started last year in BC Place with the great game, but also the great week that it was paired with the Grey Cup, I think we saw that momentum throughout the CIS year, and to have a great showcase of our game, and not just the CFL game in Toronto, but the CIS game as well. I think it really puts this league in a good position moving forward. And a lot of those eyeballs, I've already heard from people, were young kids, aspiring players who want to play at this level. And I think more than anything, what it does is when we have a great event like that, it helps us keep our best kids in Canada because they want to play in front of friends and family.
Well, I think one of the keys, too, for all of this is that with not just 919,000 people watching, but 3.3 million tuning in at some point over the course of the game, this eventually has to translate into corporate dollars supporting the CIS. Now, I know the model that went into this. MRX, which is basically Bob Young, and the Hamilton Tiger Cats have put this thing together for the last 2 years. There's a bit of a point of reckoning right now because it hasn't necessarily translated into sponsorship dollars. With these sorts of numbers, not only at the gate, but TV-wise, this has to translate into corporate Canada stepping up and supporting this game. It's a very important decision right now for CIS as they go into this first option year with MRX, whether or not they continue this relationship between the two of them, because if CIS decides that they're going to cut MRX loose, the Grey Cup pairing or the CFL pairing with the CIS is going to come to an end, and they won't be able to get it back for about another 10 years. And Donnovan, I think that's pretty critical.
Yeah, that's a great point. This is not just a football situation for the growth of the game. The business module and what it is moving forward is important as well. And I think what really has to happen is the game is really promoted well in a regional aspect. In individual schools, individual leagues are doing great jobs of meeting with corporate partners in a local area and meeting their needs. Now we need to get a lot of those great minds and great business people at all these campuses together and say, how can we grow this game nationally and attract some national sponsors who have a bit more money disposable to spend on promoting their product through our product at CIS. So I think that plan can't just start at the end of November. It has to be something that we commit to throughout the CIS season, and then we see the payoff at the end of the year. So getting some national sponsors on board by using the great minds like a guy like Jeff Giles, who's done a great job at McMaster, or even a guy like Stu Lang at Guelph, who has a great business acumen, and the good folks at Laval who've promoted their product very well. Across the board, we need a strategy to promote not just our individual programs or leagues, but the entire game. And I think if we do that from Labor Day on, I think we're in a good spot.
Donnovan, you mentioned keeping young players focused and involved in this thing. Billy, you won a Heck Creighton Trophy last year. You were part of the award show. You were a part of that whole week. What did it mean to you as a CIS player to be involved in a week that was Vanier Cup and Grey Cup all meshed together?
I think it was great, to be honest. When I went up and got my award, it was great. I looked down, Travis Lule, Anthony Calvillo were waiting to be nominated for Most Outstanding Player in the CFL, and it was a great feeling for myself to be a part of that award being given to such an outstanding player. So I think if they can continue giving CIS players that opportunity, it will create exposure for everybody else.
And now let's come back to that point a little bit. The pairing of the Grey Cup with the Vanier Cup, I mean, this is kind of turning into a bit of a hot button issue next year because it could create some problems, right?
Yeah, it could. First of all, you've got a town like Regina. And Regina is already compromised enough when it comes to hosting a Grey Cup. They don't have the hotel space. I remember the last time the Grey Cup was in Regina, there was actually a lineup of trailers and campers that were all plugged in just because they don't have the space in the city. People go to Moose Jaw, people go to Saskatoon, people go to other places to actually find hotel space if they're coming in from other parts of the country. How do you accommodate two games at the same time in a city like that, first of all, and in a building the size of Mosaic Stadium? I know through logistics you can't do the two. I'm open to suggestions here at the table. Where do you take this game next year if you can't play it in Regina?
Well, I think you have to keep it in cities like Toronto or Vancouver or any place that can house it. You can't have it in a place that can't have the people. I mean, obviously the television numbers are fantastic for this season and the numbers that we got in Toronto. I mean, when we talked to Donnovan a couple weeks ago, Donnovan, you were questioning whether Toronto was going to get behind this whole thing. Now, you know, maybe it was that fact that McMaster got into it, but we did see last year, for instance, with Laval and McMaster being in Vancouver, that we're still able to get over 20, 25,000, whatever the number was last year. And I think we got to keep that momentum going around the CIS and get it into these cities that can house that and are able to bring the people in and get the television number, because that's how the game's going to grow in Canada. I mean, that's just my opinion, though.
The situation that you have is, if it is in Toronto, let's say, and the Grey Cup's in Regina, it's the same weekend. As a newspaper organization, where do you send your football reporter? As a television station, where do you send your football analyst? So splitting it across the country, it creates some problems. It's nice that it has its own stage at times, but also creates some hard decisions for broadcasters.
All right, now, Donnovan, real quick, we're going to throw it to you while we got you here before we run out of time with you. The OUA favorites for next year, McMaster losing a couple key pieces here. Who steps up?
And you know what? I hate doing this because as soon as you say one or two schools, you got 9 or 10 that are upset at you. And we're not even done recruiting. We have to see who gets drafted, who's coming back as a fifth-year player and whatnot. I will say this, though. I think the 4 schools that we saw in the semifinals in Ontario we'll see in the semifinals once again.
Billy and the Beast, let's talk Canada West. Mr. Green, shoot.
I think the main team in Canada West next year will be Saskatchewan Huskies. They're returning a bunch of guys. Like DJ said, the guy who touches the ball, first and foremost, the quarterback, is the most important guy on the field. Drew Burko's got a lot of talent. This year he was a first-year guy. Redshirted, of course, his first year, but this year his first year of eligibility. He's going to be playing an integral role for them. He's talented. He's got a lot of players around him. You return Kit Hillis, who led the conference in receiving this year. I think they lose a couple guys in their secondary, Bryce McCall, Mitch Friesen, but I think they'll recruit to fill those holes. Calgary's always strong. They've won 5 Hardy Cups in a row, but I think if it's going to happen to break that streak, I think next year the Huskies are going to have a chance.
It's been the same teams in the West with Calgary and Saskatchewan being the bigwigs, but I would like to see a team like Regina, or as Billy said, one of the other teams. Surprised you didn't go with UBC, one of your alma mater, but you can't discount what Calgary brings to the table with their head coaching and with the coaching staff that they put together. So don't count out the Dinos.
Yeah, and definitely in the words of Andrew Buchholz, you never count out the Dinos, of course. Definitely UBC will be a little better. They got rid of that plug they had at quarterback last year, so there's nowhere to go about up. But Donnovan, live from Toronto, thanks again for joining us. Much appreciated, and we'll catch you again next season. A quick Twitter plug, my friend.
Sure. It's at Donnovan Bennett, Donnovan, Bennett. And even though it's the off season, as you guys all know, there is no off season in football. So I'm going to be talking football all the way until next August and next September.
Okay, we welcome in JP Shoiry, now live from Montreal, from acrofoot.com. Thanks for joining us, JP.
Hey, it's good to be with you guys.
Always good to have you, my friend. Now let's get right into it. Vanier Cup, Laval, victorious. What were their strengths in this game?
I mean, you can go over as many details as you want. It's all about the line of scrimmage. Laval just completely owned McMaster on both sides of the front. You know, their O-line played a huge game, you know, protecting the quarterback, but also running the football. You know, they ran for 373 yards in that matchup. You know, how crazy is that? And on the other side, they sacked Kyle Quinlan 7 times. That's a Vanier Cup record. So, you know, big credit for the both lines for Laval and winning their 7th Vanier Cup.
We've talked about this year's Vanier quite a bit, some great discussion. Let's jump to next year, though. JP, a lot of speculation that perhaps Montreal or Quebec City could be the future venue for the next Vanier Cup.
Well, you know what, all that speculation, I leave that up to you guys. And I know Jim's big on that subject, so, you know, I might throw that one up to him. But really, you know, wherever it is, you know, unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be held with the Grey Cup. You know, it's a great happening. But, you know, nonetheless, you know, we love to see some CIS football late in November.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see if they go to Montreal, because if they do it in Montreal, they're pairing up with MRX and they're pairing up with the Montreal Alouettes. And there's been even talk about moving it to the Big O. If they do it in Quebec, it's Laval. And I think it's a coronation for Laval, which leads me to the next point. In the RSCQ, is there anyone who can beat Laval?
You know what, that's a big problem the Q's facing right now. Laval is just so good. I mean, they're top of the class in everything. They're the winningest program. They have the best facilities. They have the best coaches. They have the best recruiting class. So really, it's gonna be interesting to see if, you know, Sherbrooke or Montreal can man up to them. But really, you gotta be able to beat Laval at home, and they've won 59 consecutive games there. So really, you gotta expect Laval, with all those players coming back next season, to still be top of the class.
You know, I want to hear the two quarterbacks here, yourself, JP, and Billy, talk about that Laval team. You talked, JP, about how they dominated on the line of scrimmage, but especially with that defensive front seven, Billy, no wonder Kyle Quinlan was on his heels for most of the afternoon.
Yeah, one of the things with a great quarterback is you don't want him to get into a rhythm. You don't want him to be able to sit back there all game and just pick you apart. And I think that was one of the main things that Laval was able to do. They did a great job being able to get him, hit him early, get him down, get him kind of uneasy in the pocket. So I think that was the key to victory for them. They brought pressure all day, and when they didn't bring pressure, Kyle was able to complete some passes, get going, get his runs going. But Plessius and Arnaud Gascon-Nadon, he did a great job getting into the backfield, disrupting him a little bit, and they didn't let him move up, slide, and get out of the pocket, which is something that he did great in last year's Vanier Cup.
All right, now I want to get everybody's opinion on this one, especially the two former quarterbacks here with Billy and JP. Quarterbacks heading to CFL. Right now, of course, Kyle Quinlan, it looks like a sure shoot right now. He looks almost CFL ready. He looks just very poised back there. But when it comes to Canadian quarterbacks in the CFL, really it's few and far between. Do you think that's going to change in the upcoming years?
You know, I hope so. I hope so. You know, you got a guy like Billy standing with you. You know, I was playing the ball, you know, 2 years ago. You know, Kyle's definitely, you know, the best to be graduating in the recent history. But really, there's only 8 teams in the CFL. Like, how can you not find 8 decent quarterbacks, you know, that you can groom for a couple of years, you know, in that third quarterback spot? I mean, to me, you know, the CFL goes with the slogan, you know, this is our league. Well, I will abide by that when I have Canadian quarterbacks on their rosters.
You know, and it's funny, though, because we spoke about this, Billy, last week when we were off camera. and you were saying you're going to learn how to block because you know in reality you're not going to get a shot.
Yeah, that's one of the main things. I think that you're not going to see a change until they either change the rule or across the board you have outstanding quarterbacks of Kyle Quinlan's caliber across the entire country. One of the things that I've noticed through my experience in the last year is that the CFL teams see a guy like Marco Briette, for example, with the Alouettes. They see him, a big, strong guy. They'd rather change him to another position, him count for the ratio, be able to use him on specials, play him at linebacker now. Myself, they maybe see me moving to another position for that same reason. They want me or anybody else who they believe can play another position to count for them as a Canadian, as an athlete, and they believe that their coaching's good enough that they can move guys from position to position. I'm hoping for Kyle that he will get a shot as a quarterback. You've seen him. He won 21 straight games with McMaster. He had guys around him, obviously, but he was the reason that team did the things that they wanted to do, and I'm really rooting for him.
But a CFL team has to be committed to development here. When you take a look at a path of, say, a Travis Lulay, he's had a couple of NFL camps. He sat on the bench in BC for 2 years. If people expect a guy like Kyle Quinlan to step into the lineup right away and perform, you know, you're talking in Technicolor. CFL teams have to spend the money and develop the talent in that position. There may be some sort of transitionary period where you bring CIS quarterbacks into camp like they did last year for some exposure to a pro camp, pro speed, and pro coaching. But they have to remain committed to that at the CFL level to bring these CIS guys in, and they have to change the rules. I know the coaches from the CIS asked the CFL this time in, time out every year, and the feedback that I get from CIS coaches is that the CFL is just not interested, and the CFL is missing out on a major marketing opportunity by shunning the Canadian quarterback.
The worst cliche in journalism, only time will tell. All right, thank you very much, JP. Quick Twitter plug as always, my friend.
Guys, you just follow me on Twitter at JP Shoiry, but mostly I want to thank you guys for giving me this opportunity to be on this panel with you guys. It was a lot of fun this season.
It's great to have you, bud, and we hope to have you again next season.
Sure.
All right, thank you very much, JP, and thank you to everyone. That was the final installment of Krown Canadian University Countdown. Now we're going to throw a few extra thank yous out there.
Absolutely. We've got to thank Russell Athletic for jumping on board with us this season, sponsored all our playoff coverage, dipped us in some of this nice gear, as the kids say. So thank you for Russell for being on board and supporting CIS football this season on CIS Countdown.
And we have a special thank you to give out to a certain individual in Saskatoon. Back in the spring when I was shopping this program around to see if we could get it on for another year, I sent an email out asking for maybe some leads in terms of a sponsorship to a man by the name of David Dubé. Instead of giving me a lead, 48 hours later he said, I'm behind it, I'm sponsoring it, and thanks to David and his family, we're getting this show on next year as well. He stepped up in a 2-year agreement. So my deepest of gratitude towards David. Thanks very much.
And to add to that, the Dubé family making a generous donation, among many others. Thank you, everybody that got involved. The Mustache-a-thon for the BC Cancer Foundation. These beauties, yeah, it's time for them to go. This is 12:01, December 1st, gone. I don't know about you, but...
I'm keeping mine.
Yeah?
Oh, I've been doing awesome with it.
You enjoyed the single life?
Really. Nah, I'm just kidding.
Okay.
I did enjoy the single life, actually.
Fair enough, fair enough. And you know what? Down the panel, we'll start out Conor the Beast Hammond. Thanks so much.
It was my pleasure, guys.
Thank you for joining us. Of course, Mr. Jim Mullin. There we go, the gun's out of ammo.
Yeah, out of ammo.
He's retired the musket for another year.
It's the end of the season.
Yep, UBC quarterback, Mr. Billy Green.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you, and of course, Mr. Andrew Wadden.
Pleasure being here. Pleasure working with you. Pleasure working with all of you.
3 lies in a row. Thank you very much. Greatly appreciated. From all of us here, thanks again to everybody, the cast and crew. You guys work so hard behind the scenes. You do a great job. Thank you so much. We hope to talk to you guys soon, and we will see you next season.
Krown Produce supplying select Canadian retailers. Krown Produce, proud sponsors of Canada West Football and Canadian University Countdown on Shaw.